World War II, oversimplified. Let's go.
This video was made possible by Skillshare.
Thank you, Skillshare.
Churchill was a
Very
man
cool.
with many talents. He was an artist, a butterfly enthusiast, and he had an unpublished manuscript about aliens. Clearly...
What do you mean, aliens? Let me actually look it up. Winston Churchill, aliens. You mean an essay? A newly unearthed article about a great politician reveals he reasoned like a scientist about the likelihood of extraterrestrials. Ah, he was a believer. Modern thinking. He's like, yeah, aliens was cool and shit. That doesn't really matter to us.
he was a man with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Maybe he could have loaded up his computer...
Kinda like my insatiable thirst for his ass. Did you... Dude. Let me show you something. Look at his handsome dude. Look at his package. Damn, son. Also, don't mind the search thingy. It's whatever. Alright, but look at this. Look at this handsome boy. That's what we all have to be thirsty about.
And logged onto Skillshare, an online learning community with more than 19,000 classes in design, business, technology, and more. Perhaps he was considering a side career in fashion, but didn't know where to start. On Skillshare, he would find courses in photography or just Skillshare heavily with his class. Annual subscription, Skillshare is under $10. First 1,000 people for just... Now, without further ado. It's 1902. A young man by the name of Benito Mussolini moves from Italy to Switzerland to avoid military service. He gets big into socialism, working for trade unions, writing for socialist newspapers, advocating a violent overthrow of European monarchy.
Yeah, that's the thing, dude. With a lot of the fascists, they started off as socialists as well, but then they're like, yo, the socialists don't want war, but I want war, so let me get into it. And at the end of the day, like, far left and far right aren't really that different from each other. Also, as some of you probably know, I post a lot of random memes making fun of the left, the right, random funny things on the community tab, and I swear to God, the communists and the fascists come out of the goddamn woodwork and they're like, oh, snowflaking it up. Oh man, it's funny. It's actually really funny. Recently, before we continue on, recently I posted one in here. Let me show it off to you. This one, just a stupid little picture, right? About Jews. Not at all. It's just a stupid meme, right? Look at how many comments. 200 comments for like 600 likes. That's bad. And all of these comments have like replies to them. It's horrendous. I swear to God. Oh man. Leftist poster. Dude, I've been accused of being a leftist poster and a right poster. I'm everything, apparently.
Monarchies,
Anyway,
the whole shebang.
let's
This gets him in a
continue
bit
on.
of trouble with the
It's
Swiss
kind of like
police, so he
similar
gets
to
arrested, sent back to
every
Italy, set
dictator
free,
ever.
returns to
Start off
Switzerland,
left,
is
go
arrested
right.
again, goes back to Italy again, completes his military service after previously avoiding it, and then after a brief stint as
Also,
an
why does Mussolini always look so angry?
elementary school teacher, he finally returns to work as an avid socialist.
Also an artist. Did you not look at
And then
this?
after a brief stint as an elementary school teacher, he finally returns
Dude,
to work.
Look at this. No wonder Adolf Hitler got expelled from, well, he didn't even get into art school with a genius like this going around. I swear to God.
As an avid socialist. His speeches and journalistic abilities made him famous among Italian socialists. He was anti-war, so when Italy colonized Libya in 1910, he rioted and got arrested. Then World War I came along, and once again he protested Italy's involvement. But then he thought, wait a minute, this war could bring about the social climate needed to overthrow European monarchies and bring about the socialist revolution everywhere. And suddenly he was pro-war, but his fellow socialists didn't like his new pro-war stance, so they kicked him out of the party. So then he said, you know what?
Pro-war is like one of those things like, many of you will die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, war can't always be avoided, but I always, it irks me when people are like, yeah, we gotta go to war. Even to this day, you know, with the world wars being in the distant past at this point, not many people from that era are still alive. People are more gearing up towards war, and it's a scary thing.
I'm done with socialism. We need something new, not based on class divisions tearing us apart, but based on
racism.
Unity through nationality. We'll conquer the Mediterranean and reunite.
I mean, isn't that kind of like a thing? I keep pausing the video, but I always have like so much to ramble, I feel like. But isn't that like it's essentially the same thing. Obviously, it's not. You know, if you want to, you can find plenty of difference, but the core principle is the same. Uniting the people, either based on class or based on nationality or ethnicity. But in essence, it's the same thing. Find a scapegoat and install an authoritarian regime so that you can do your bidding while using the scapegoat to get away with stuff.
All Italian peoples, just like the days of the Roman Empire. I'll call it fascismo, and it will guide the Italian nation to greatness. That's all well and good, Mr. Mussolini, but what kind of
what does fascismo mean, actually, in Italian? I don't know Italian.
Let's go with bold.
What a handsome boy. Bruh. Somebody get me his number. Damn. What is it with World War figures and being hella thick? I'm all for it, but like, excuse you?
Italy had been on the winner's side in World War I, and they hoped they were going to get a lot out of it, but in the end, they only got a little, and they felt cheated. On top of that, a bad economy and weak governments meant that the Italian people were a little unhappy. So when Mussolini came along and said that he could fix everything, his fascist movement gained a lot of support. In 1922, he went to the king and said, "Make me prime minister, or I'll make me prime minister." And the king said, "You and what army?" "This army."
Oh. They're all bald?
Then he went about establishing a dictatorship with himself at its center. Europe had its first fascist dictator. Next up, Germany. Germany had been on the loser's side, and they got absolutely wrecked by the Treaty of Versailles. They lost territory. Germany had been on the loser's side, and they got
Look at that, little thumbs up. Germany doesn't have that anymore. Well, after World War I, because they didn't have a good time.
By the Treaty of Versailles. They lost territory, had to demilitarize the Rhineland, had to reduce their army to just 100,000 men, couldn't have an air force, had to pay the Allies a huge amount of money that it didn't have, and a new rule was established that every Englishman withheld the right to walk into the center of Berlin, pick out any German they wanted, and spank the...
You know what's going to help me out of this debt crisis? Hyperinflation. They did it on purpose, by the way. I don't know if you know it. They just underestimated the control that they would... they overestimated the amount of control that they would have over their hyperinflation and just fucking perished. But they did that on purpose. Could you imagine? Well, I guess that's also kind of like what's happening with Turkey these days.
The hell out of them. I made that last one up, but it helps you understand how all this felt to Germans. On top of that, a bad economy and weak governments meant that when a small angry man with a silly mustache came along and said that he could fix everything, the German people loved it. Hitler had been a soldier.
How tall is Hitler? Let me look it up. It's just small. 1.75 m, dude. That's actually kind of tall. I feel like for back in the day. Yeah, 5'10". I don't know what that means, but
soldier during World War I, and he was crazy patriotic, and nobody was madder than him about Germany's humiliation. He helped start a new political party, and in 1923 attempted a march on Munich with his boys.
Oh, if he's 5'10",
and then he got arrested. But his popularity grew and grew, and in 1933 the president made him chancellor. He believed he was Germany's great destined savior, and he went full megalomaniac, establishing a dictatorship with himself at its center. Europe had fascist dictator number 2. Hitler and Mussolini had a lot of the same ideas, but more importantly, they had the same enemies, and they started to get along. Anyone else want to be friends? Franco? No?
No?
You good?
Okay.
I do. Who's that? It's Japan, and they've taken over northern China. Let's rewind a bit. Japan had isolated itself from the rest of the world for over 200 years until the Americans showed up and said, "You're going to trade with us and you're going to like it." Then the Western powers imposed a bunch of unequal treaties, meaning Japan's economy was bust. They also had no natural resources, so they decided to go get some. They went to war with China to gain a sphere of influence over Korea, and they took a bunch of China's stuff. But then the West said, "Hey, cut that out." And since Japan couldn't take on the West, they said, "Okay, I guess we'll just go." Wait a minute, what are you doing? Taking advantage of a weakened China and setting up spheres of influence. But I was the one who weakened them.
Took Manchuria
anyway, and you guys didn't let me have anything. We know. That seems unfair. We don't think so. Okay, see ya. So Japan thought, screw this, and went to war with Russia, and stunned everyone by actually winning.
Yeah,
Then they fully
that's
annexed Korea, but they didn't stop there. In World War I, they took Germany's colonies and islands in Asia,
but what
and
about
then in an
Manchuria?
incident that was maybe staged by the Japanese army, a
it's
bomb dropped the
afterwards.
Japanese train in Manchuria, giving them an excuse
The
to launch an
Mukden
invasion
incident.
and take over. So here's the situation. Nazi
got
Germany,
you.
Fascist Italy, and Japan all believe they're racially superior, all feel hostility towards the Allies, and all want to militarize and take over more stuff. And so they did. Let's start with Germany. Hitler hated the Treaty of Versailles, and now he was ready to begin undoing it. In complete violation of the treaty, the first Luftwaffe squadrons were set up, conscription was introduced, and he pimped up his army. The Allies did nothing. Then Hitler
Railway
sent his army
guns.
back into the demilitarized Rhineland, giving orders to immediately retreat if the
I'm
Allies showed
curious
up.
about
The
how it
Allies
works
did
actually,
nothing.
a
With his
railway gun.
military
Wouldn't it,
re-strengthened, he could now
knockback
move
just
on to
knock you
step
off
2.
of the rails?
He wanted to rapidly increase the
You're not
Aryan
gonna tell me,
population,
like, two
and to do
flimsy
so,
pieces
he
of
needed
metal
Lebensraum,
are
or in
enough
other
to
words,
hold up
he would have to take over
tons
the world.
upon
But for
tons
now,
of
a good
power.
portion of Europe would do, and he began eyeing up his neighbors. The Allies finally started to get worried, so they implemented a fairly useless diplomatic strategy called appeasement, and it went a little something like this. Hitler would say, I want that thing, and the Allies would say, you can't have that thing. Okay, you can have that thing, but no more. I want that thing.
Worked a lot.
And repeat. In 1938, Hitler's army marched into Austria and just
part of
took
it
it
was
with no
also,
resistance.
them
Boom,
buying
this is
time.
Germany now. Next, he demanded to be given
Which
the
was a stupid
Sudetenland, an area
thing
of
to do,
Czechoslovakia
obviously,
with
but
many
it's not like
ethnic
they're like,
Germans.
oh, yeah,
The
he's
Allies held a
definitely
meeting
gonna
with
stop.
Hitler
Let's
in
be
Munich
real.
and said, look,
No one's
we're going to
that
give you what...
naive.
Hang on, this meeting is about my territory. Shouldn't I come to the meeting too?
Nah.
Anyway, we're going
Are
to
you
give
a
you what
great
you
power?
want.
I don't think so.
Really? Yeah. Just like that? Yep. What's the catch? Just sign this piece of paper promising you won't invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. Okay. Then Chamberlain returned home victorious, waving his signed piece of paper in the air, declaring crisis to be averted and the continuation of world peace. And
Also,
we built a
wasn't there,
statue of
like,
Chamberlain in his honor, and every day on the 30th
kind of
of September we
reparations
celebrate
that,
Chamberlain Day. Hitler's invading the rest of Czechoslovakia.
Would
What?
be getting or
He's
something?
invading the rest of Czechoslovakia. Oh. You lied to me. What do you expect? I'm Hitler. Not to be outdone, Mussolini also wanted to get in on the action. He thought to himself,
Why you gotta
isn't
be
there
so
a not
mean to Hitler? Don't you know that Hitler killed Hitler? If anything, he's a hero.
yet colonized nation somewhere which is so underdeveloped
I mean,
that the people
if you
would be
look at the
defending
comments
themselves
of some of
against our
my
tanks with
posts
literal
making fun
bows
of
and
the,
arrows and wooden spears?
Far right.
Oh, there is?
Some of the people seem to
Fantastic.
definitely think so.
And so he took it. Italy also wanted to control the entrance to the Adriatic Sea, so they occupied Albania. Then, in another incident
Then they
which was
failed to
maybe
occupy
staged by the
Greece.
Japanese, gunfire was exchanged by Japanese and Chinese troops at the Marco Polo Bridge, and the Japanese launched yet another invasion against China. They swept through Beijing and
Fun
Shanghai,
fact,
and then advanced to the
Germany
Yangtze Valley
actually
to
had
China's
really
then capital,
good,
Nanking. It was
ties with China. There was a chance at some point where they would actually have supported China instead of Japan. But then with, the kicking off of the war, they had to pick side, and they ended up with Japan.
here that saw the worst of Japan's shocking atrocities committed against the Chinese people. Back in Europe, Germany and Italy made their relationship status official by signing the Pact of Steel. Then, Hitler turned his eyes towards Poland and the hated Polish corridor, splitting Germany in two. At this point, the Allies really had to put their foot down, and they warned him that an invasion of Poland would mean war. Hitler had planned to continue his advance eastward, but he didn't want to end up fighting a war on two fronts. So for now, he made an alliance with Stalin, saying, how about we both invade Poland and split it between the two of us, and I
Could you
definitely won't
imagine
not
a
refrain from
world
not
where
betraying you
the
sometime in the future.
alliance between Hitler and Stalin
Sounds
actually stayed in place?
Good. This new alliance stunned the West. On the 1st of September
I don't think that
1939,
would be a
German
good world
troops
to
entered
live in.
Poland, and Britain and France declared war on
And I feel like
Germany.
eventually they'd fight each other anyway, but...
The Poles fought
what if
hard,
it
but they were
stayed
no
for like
match for the
5
two
more
giants
years?
crashing down on them from either side. Then came a period known as the Phony War, where everyone just sort of sat around not doing much. The French had launched a small invasion into the Saarland, but they maintained mostly defensive positions, and after a while decided to just turn around and call it a day. Speaking of France,
dude?
the French were still super proud of their victory in World War I, and they hadn't really moved on from it. They still used horses, they dispatched messages by motorbike instead of
I've
using
played
radio.
enough Hoi
Orders
4.
from the
If they had
commander-in-chief
just
were usually
declared
pretty vague,
war,
and the troops were rarely inspected.
while Hitler
They built
was
a line of defenses along their
remobilizing,
German border,
the
but didn't
Rhineland,
bother extending
they
it
could've
all the way
won.
to the Channel, and they
That's how
wouldn't
I
launch
usually
artillery
win.
strikes against Germany out of fear of being retaliated against. In a war,
Or
they
make the
didn't want
little
to attack
entente.
the enemy. And at first the UK wasn't much better. Chamberlain still naively hoped that the war could be ended diplomatically. Instead of bombing raids, the RAF dropped propaganda.
It's so stupid. It's like going out to a party and someone's like harassing your girlfriend, and it keeps getting worse and worse, and meanwhile you're just like there, dude, let's be friends instead. Don't harass my girlfriend. And then he starts ripping off her clothes, and doing some unsightly things, and you're like, no, come on, dude, don't be like that. I know you're better than that. It's absolutely ridiculous, but obviously
leaflets over German cities, which one air marshal said likely did nothing but provide the continent with toilet paper for the duration of the war. They also only sent 200,000 men to France, while the French had mobilized millions. Both Britain and France wanted to avoid a repeat of the First World War, and so they wanted to keep the war as far from home as possible. So they turned their eyes north, towards Norway. Neutral Sweden was exporting iron ore to Germany through neutral Norway, so the Allies asked them if they could please stop exporting iron ore to Germany, but this request was refused. Then, the Soviet Union attacked Finland, so the Allies said, how about we land troops in Norway and move them across Sweden to go help out your good pal Finland, and along the way maybe take control of all your airfields. But Norway and Sweden still said no. So the UK mined the waters around Norway to force any transport ships into international waters, and they also attacked a German tanker they found in the area. Hitler realized what the Allies were up to, and he quickly moved to secure his supply of iron ore. He launched an invasion through Denmark into Norway. The Allies rushed to land troops at key ports along the coast, but Germany had taken control of Norway's airfield, and their air superiority decided the fight. The Allies had to retreat. After this slightly embarrassing failure, Chamberlain resigned and was replaced with Winston Churchill, who had a slightly different approach to dealing with the Germans. Hitler's overall strategy was similar to Germany's First World War strategy. Attack France, defeat France, knocking out the UK in the process, then turn on the Soviet Union and win the war. During the phony war, the Allies had given Hitler time to prepare his forces. Now, he was ready to attack. The Allies had wanted to place troops in Belgium, but Belgium had refused, and in a move that surprised pretty much no one, Hitler launched an invasion to get around France's defenses. The Allies charged into Belgium at full speed to meet the German invasion head-on, and it looked like a repeat of the First World War was coming, but this time...
as this would happen at some point. People are like, no one's gonna invade, don't worry, and then they just get destroyed in like 6 hours or something.
Hitler had a trick up.
Is it also something that happened to Poland? They did like an exercise recently, a military exercise where an unspecified nation would invade them and they would have to defend themselves with that unspecified nation, most likely being Russia, let's be real. And then they just got BTFO'd in like 6 hours or so, which, you know, was kind of a shock to them, to the point where they're like, oh shit, we gotta actually spend money on our military.
His sleeve. Blitzkrieg. As the Germans advanced, they sent thousands of refugees west.
Well, part of it was Blitzkrieg, but part of it was crack cocaine that every soldier was sniffing, so they didn't have to sleep while they were invading as well.
Slowing down the Allies. Then, to the south, the French had left the Ardennes, an area full of hills and forests, pretty underdefended, because they thought it was naturally impenetrable. Well, the Germans were about to penetrate it with everything they had. They smashed 50 Wehrmacht divisions through and encircled the Allied armies at lightning speed. The best of the Allied forces were now trapped. The Germans squeezed in from all sides, taking out France's best armies and nearly wiping out the British too. But they managed to make a desperate last-minute escape at Dunkirk, with British civilian ships even making the perilous journey to bring their young men home. With most of the French forces depleted, the Germans breezed through, taking Paris, and France fell. What the Germans couldn't do in World War I, Hitler had done just like that. Hitler hoped that with the fall of France, the UK would also lose hope and sue for peace. But quite annoyingly, it didn't, and he needed to secure the Western Front, so he tried to force them into submission with mind games. The UK were now all alone, and Hitler wanted to emphasize that. First of all, just before France fell, Italy finally declared war on the Allies, making the UK's situation even worse. Next, instead of just occupying all of France, Hitler occupied the coastal areas for defense, but allowed France to continue its existence as a German puppet state. This way, it looked like the UK's old allies had decided to switch sides. Hitler also hoped the UK wouldn't attack any of her old allies' navy bases or colonies in Africa, giving Hitler an extra line of defense to the south. But the UK made sure to respond to this by sailing down to France's navy base in Algeria and wrecking a bunch of ships. So have at it. Hitler then began laying down plans for an invasion of Great Britain. Before German troops could land on British soil, he would first need air and naval superiority across the Channel. Waves of German bombers came, while the completely outnumbered RAF worked bravely around the clock in an attempt to quell the German attacks. At first, the Luftwaffe targeted British ports and coastal facilities. Then it attacked RAF bases, crippling the RAF's ability to defend the nation. And it looked like Hitler's Great British invasion was coming. But then, Churchill ordered a small, pretty insignificant bombing raid over Berlin. It didn't do much damage, but Hitler was furious, and he immediately ordered the Luftwaffe to refocus its attacks on civilian targets in London. Children were sent off to the countryside away from their parents to avoid danger, and frequent trips to air raid shelters became a daily occurrence. But British morale held firm, smiling, knitting, lounging casually. These people have balls of steel. This refocusing on London also gave the RAF breathing space to reorganize, so Hitler kind of shot himself in the foot there. Just the foot for now. Finally, the Luftwaffe sent one massive all-out attack on London, and the RAF successfully repelled it, destroying many of the German aircraft and placing air superiority firmly in British hands. Hitler's invasion had to be postponed, but the bombing of British cities continued for some time.
Should have stuck with the strategic targets instead of, you know, going after the cities. Oh well, but that's pretty much it for this part. I do hope you've enjoyed it. It's a bit of different content from what I usually do. But I always wanted to do some reacting content. I did it on my second channel back in the day with memes and stuff like that. But you know what? I like history stuff. It's always going to have a soft spot for me. So, you know, if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you did. And hopefully I can do more parts of this. Anyway, have a good one. Bye-bye.